cool guitars. Chuck's got the questions, digging so sharp, peeling back layers, hitting the heart.
Yeah, so good to have you back. I just kept getting hits on that interview we did, I don't know, was it 1 or 2 years ago? And then the clip from that, the Tomb of Gilgamesh, people keep commenting on that. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, that was good. Yeah, that was probably right about a year ago. I think that was when, we dropped Ancient Angels.
Yeah.
And so I want to say that it was probably September, October. It had to be right around then because I know that's when we released it.
Yeah, that was a cool movie. There was a couple people that are still commenting occasionally that they have trouble getting it or something. Is it still on Vimeo? Is it still available?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of a mess. I mean, I don't know. I guess when you distribute stuff like that, they don't want to make it easy for you to, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, that's a conspiratorial side of me saying it's weird that we have so many problems with this. It doesn't seem like in this day and age of multimedia that it should be hard to sell a movie, kind of mostly yourself. But, we probably need to talk to more people who do it. I know that Brian was trying to get it released on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that because it's definitely would be above average film on Amazon. There's some crap on Amazon Prime. You'd be way better than a lot of the stuff on there.
Well, Brian is funny because one of the reasons we did the movie is that he did a movie about reptilians. It's on Amazon Prime. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I got to check that out. What's that one called?
It might just be called Reptilians. I'm not sure exactly what the title was, but the funny part about it was, here's a little spoilers, is when Brian was telling me about that, he's like, he had there's a guy who has a production company and he basically just wants to get some movies made. And the guy's like, hey, I got this movie I want you to be in. It's about reptilians. And Brian's like, I don't believe in reptilians. He's like, I don't care. just like do it anyways. And of course, I think mostly it's about kind of Nephilim and demons and stuff. So like that's basically what it's similar to Ancient Angels in that way.
Well, that's what I think. A lot of this stuff is kind of connected, whether you believe in this or you believe because I know people that are like, oh, I don't believe in aliens. That's ridiculous. But I believe in ghosts. Yeah. And then you're like, what? And there's people that are like, oh, I believe in ghosts, and aliens or I believe in this. But I feel like there's some of the stuff like with the aliens and the UFOs, there's people that think that is like some sort of interdimensional thing. And some people think it's biblical. It's angels or something, right?
Well, right. That's the interesting thing. I've noticed that, and I think a lot of people, especially who dig into the truth and try to figure things out. I do remember, obviously growing up in the 80s and all the ET stuff and alien stuff and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Star Wars, and then so then we were always taught aliens came from outer space. But then it wasn't until recently that I'm not sure what the main movie was that talked about this. Might have been that stupid Crystal Skull movie with Indiana Jones.
Oh, God, that was bad.
Oh, it was so bad. But they were saying, yeah, they're interdimensional. And I think that was it was kind of like, okay, somebody finally shifted that. And now that's kind of almost more the accepted, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how well accepted it is, but I think that's interesting because obviously then you have the people who say, yeah, aliens are not what you think they are. And then, okay, so now now we're not actually talking past each other. It actually seems like this could, we could be getting to semantics. What is this?
Right.
I've long said that angels basically are aliens because if they're not from Earth, well, then they're extraterrestrial. We don't really know where they're from, but they're not from here.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, by definition, they would be alien to us. And obviously, even the term alien just means they're not from here.
Yeah, and that's similar to, I had this lady on that, actually, I think it was this book about gray aliens and artificial intelligence. And I guess this guy, he actually died, but it's a girl that did a bunch of research with him. And it's really interesting how they, this is the crazy one. It's gray aliens and the harvesting of souls. How they're using people to steal their soul. I don't know. It's almost complex, but it's so interesting. And I feel like some of this stuff could tie into each other. Maybe it's all connected. I don't know. That's my theory anyway.
Oh, definitely. Well, they have I'm sure you probably heard this, but Lester Crowley, he was like channeling some kind of demon, and he drew a picture and he called it Lamb, and it looks just like a gray alien.
Hmm.
You never seen that?
No.
It's kind of had like beady eyes, but everything, it had the big giant head and everything. It looks just like an, you know, basically like a Spielberg. It's kind of funny if you think about it. Like, how do we even get like kind of the gray alien stuff in the culture? And if you look at like the Spielberg stuff, I think he might be one of the first person who puts that stuff in the movies. Like, yeah, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
And so you get this idea of what an alien is. And it's, he's famously said, now we call them angels and demons. One day we'll call them something else.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, so now they're gray aliens, but they're trying to harvest souls. Why?
I mean, it's
Unless,
something about technology and how they're getting people to be more disconnected through the technology. And so it's almost like there's this other realm that is controlled by technology. I mean, I'd have to like, you'd have to like read the book to, and I'm still confused by the whole thing, but I feel like there is, because there's people that say like, okay, like we're born, we die, and then that's it, and that's life. Okay, I mean that's a theory, and then there's the people that say, Christians like yourself, you believe you're born and then you die and then you go to heaven, and then there's other people that are saying like more like there's this other reality, there's like an ultimate reality, and so I don't know if there's some sort of connection between all this stuff. I mean, there's so many different theories. I just like to learn about all of it and then try to formulate my own opinion. But
Mhm.
I never say like, oh, I know this is the way I know, I don't. I just try to learn as much as I can in the different theories. And then I try to connect the dots between some of the stuff. And obviously there's probably a lot of stuff that's just complete BS that people are
That's,
making up, or could
uh,
be the government putting out misinformation, because it's weird that the government would say like, oh no, there's no aliens. And all of a sudden recently now they're saying, well, yes, there is. And then conspiracy theorists are saying, well, we don't believe you now. Because if
no,
you're going to say it, then we don't believe it. Yeah.
well, I think that, I mean, conspiracy theorists, have had a pretty good track record lately. So I
Yeah,
think that
right?
it's,
We're
it's
running out of
what,
conspiracies. Like that.
I mean,
True.
the main true conspiracy is do not trust anything the government tells you. Like, be very skeptical of the things they're saying. The real question would be like that you have somebody who lies to you all the time. Oh, no, there's no such thing. Oh, there's no such thing. They like literally smear people who claim they saw aliens or UFOs and things. And then they're just admitting it before Congress now. They have like a UFO guy at the Pentagon who's saying that literally there could be a mothership in our galaxy, and that's the origin of the UFOs. They have another guy goes in front of Congress saying they found non-human biologics in some crash UFO. Okay, so you just said that they weren't real just like 5 minutes ago, and now you're saying this. So yeah, so the people like me would say, all right, why now? So what are you really trying to gain by telling us now? Because it's funny, and I thought about doing a series about this a while back, and of course I probably won't now, but it was a good idea. If anybody's listening, would be a good idea for a video series. Is going back, and so like if now that they admit certain UFO and UFOs are real, and again, UFO just means unidentified flying object. It does not mean aliens from outer
Right.
space. So we don't really know what it was, but now that they acknowledge it, wouldn't it be kind of interesting to go back and revisit some of the most famous encounters and saying, okay, with this knowledge, this stuff could be real. Like, like just re-examine the stuff based on what we kind of been taught about this stuff.
Well, right. And
Because
it's interesting if they say that it's because one of the theories is that it's actually either U.S. Government or another country's government military technology, that it's like ships or something. But if that's the case, why have we been seeing stuff since the 50s? Like, wouldn't it have been revealed at this point?
well, that's the interesting thing. I actually have you heard of Michael Heiser?
No, or refresh my memory. I
He
might.
was a theologian, and he was actually really good at talking about. He talked a lot about the spiritual stuff. He wrote his most famous book was called The Unseen Realm.
Hmm.
Anyways, he's really good with like the Nephilim angel stuff. Like he passed away over the past year, but he was really interesting in that kind of that aspect. But the one thing he actually did it's a pretty good YouTube video. I'll probably send it to you. You'd probably enjoy it. And I think it was called like Aliens and Demons. And so he had this fascination with like ufology, but he's a Christian guy, and I guess he was saying that it seemed to him, and I like this theory, is he's saying like that he went to some Roswell anniversary. I can't remember when exactly Roswell happened. It was like in the 40s, like late 40s or something like that.
The crash?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been there. There's a museum for it and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess it was like whenever the anniversary was.
Okay.
And so this reporter was asking him about like, the general or whatever, the public statement was that these were like these certain kind of test dummies dropped from this,
Right.
weather balloon or something like that. And then so the reporter actually came with some receipts and he was like, "Hey, but you guys didn't start using those kind of dummies until 3 years later or something like that."
Right. Yeah. That's exactly
And
right.
yeah, and so then the guy was saying that, I forgot what the exact term he used was, that there was like some kind of there was something like everybody's memory was wrong. I forgot the way he phrased it, but he was like saying, like, he asked a question about like memory conflation or some kind of weird term like that. And so he basically was saying like that it's everyone's memories wrong. Like those things, like the Roswell thing was after that or something really bizarre. And so Michael Heiser was like, what he said was the most insane thing he's ever heard. And he said the only thing he could make sense of it was that they wanted to perpetuate the UFO thing and the alien thing. Instead of trying to tamp it down, they would rather it be this wild conspiracy. Because if you really think about it, like if I told you I saw a UFO in front of my house, I mean, maybe people don't think I'm as crazy as they would have, but like 20 years ago, if I'd have said, "Oh gosh, I saw this fleet of UFOs out front," and they'd be like, "All right, this guy hasn't been taking his medication." But if I said, "Hey, I saw this experimental government ship, this jet, you know, I think they got some new high tech stuff over at the local base," they would rather you say it was a UFO because people would look the other way and like they would dismiss it immediately. But if you really start poking into things that are real, then it's the perfect cover that people say UFOs, aliens, whatever, and the general public would just say, "Well, that's not real, so I'm not even going to look into it now."
Well, yeah, because I know there was that one story about the guy that lived near like an army base, and he accidentally heard them talking about some experimental craft or something, and so they discredited him and made him think he was crazy and made him say that it was aliens, but they were messing with him, and they knew that they knew he could hear their conversation, so then they started saying it was aliens, and then he went to tell people that it was aliens, and then they put him in like the psych ward. It was like some. Have you heard of that story? I can't remember.
No, but I mean, it lines up with everything I've ever heard, because it's like I started to think about some of that stuff with like the MK Ultra stuff and the weird stuff they do to people.
Yeah.
And then you hear about like people, during like alien abductions or whatever, these people lose time and they've been violated in every which way, and they know it was real, but then obviously nobody believes them. If you really think about it, like, so what if it was some kind of a three-letter agency did something horrible to somebody, did some experiments on them, dropped them in there. They can't remember hardly anything other than this trauma. And the only thing they can make sense of it is like, "Oh, I think I was abducted by aliens." Everybody makes a mockery of them. The trauma's real. We don't know exactly what it was, but, immediately people start to think, well, we need to lock them up now because they're obviously nuts.
Right.
Meanwhile, something really did happen to them, but like I said, it's kind of the perfect cover for a lot of really devious, nefarious stuff.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, but it's interesting to think, like you said, the conspiracies that are coming true. Like if you would have told people 20 years ago that the Catholic Church was, hiding this big pedophile scandal, people would have said, "Oh, that's a conspiracy. You're crazy." And then obviously it came true. So I grew up Catholic, so it's not a slight on Catholics. I mean, a lot of my family members are Catholic; they're great people. But in terms of the Catholic Church and the Vatican, there's something fishy to me. I think it's more than just what else are they hiding, right? I think you even talk about that in your film Ancient Angels. You briefly touched on they may be covering up some of these relics, and there's a conspiracy. Again, this is just a conspiracy, but there's a conspiracy that the Vatican has some sort of evidence of aliens or UFOs or something in that Vatican basement, which is like a really fascinating thing to me. And they might not even know where it is.
Well, you guys can look this up. I believe it was either 53 or 58 miles worth of bookshelves in their vaulted libraries. I mean, so what's not in there is the real question. Like,
well, that's what they said, and they have to prioritize it. So like, and maybe it's just evidence like eyewitness accounts. Like there's some eyewitness accounts of nuns seeing a floating orb, and it's like, that's like, they just thought, oh, well, this is nothing. And they just threw it in some file somewhere. And like, how could you even ever find that again? So they're trying to organize it now, supposedly. But yeah, I mean, they might even be hiding it on purpose. They could just have lost it.
Well, what is interesting about like the Catholic Church, and I believe it was there was a pretty good documentary I saw years ago, and it was called like the Flat Earth. No, it's not Flat Earth. It was the Hollow Earth by the Fall Brothers, by the Fourth Watch. It was the film program, and they talked a lot about how the Catholic Church over the last bunch of centuries, they have put their churches on a lot of these ancient ruins. Like you find these like really significant sites. And
I think that's what you talked about in the film. In your film.
Oh yeah, so there's good examples of it. There's this place in Mexico called Cholula, and the Spanish built this, on the top of like a mountain. They built this church. Well, it wasn't a mountain; it was a pyramid. It's actually like the biggest pyramid in the whole world, but it's actually covered. It's still covered in like dirt and stuff. They didn't uncover the whole thing, but then it's got all these tunnels that go down into it, and so the church is on top of it. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that they put it there. I mean, it's like so they have access to these tunnels. I think it was even in South America. There's a tunnel system called the Chicana, and they did the same thing. They put their church like right over top of where these ancient tunnels were.
That's creepy. It reminds me of the movie From Dusk Till Dawn, where they have the bar, and then like at the very end,
oh yeah,
they pan out, and it's like the bar is on this like giant like Mayan temple.
Yeah, it's just showing you literally the top of it. It's crazy, man. I'm sure you've probably seen some of the videos we made when we start talking about the mud flood and.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that mud flood. I just watched one of those today, a short clip of that. That was really fascinating. I don't know a lot about that.
Well, that's kind of like gets into this whole Tat-aria, old world. This conspiracy theory. Basically, there's been an advanced civilization in our recent past that's basically been covered up. And in the end
that's
of this,
Rogan talks about too. Is it the same thing he's talking about?
Well, no, I don't think he talks about this because this is like this is more bonkers, and this is like, there's evidence that it's true, and but it's the crazier part is like. So Rogan talks more about like what we talk about in Ancient Angels, about how there was whoever built the pyramids, there was this connected advanced society, and and they might throw it back like 10,000 years or 12,000 years, kind of like as a Christian, I said that's further than I would push the timeline back anyways, but they kind of push it back to whoever built those pyramids in Egypt, that was an advanced society that has been likely lost civilization stuff. But Tat-aria is more like, no, there was like a recent one, like the ones who built kind of all the real stone cathedrals and just magnificent buildings all around the world, where it's like you have this certain kind of Greco-Roman architecture all over the whole planet. I don't say planet, all over the whole earth. And every older city, there's all these stone buildings with like massive columns, big doors, domes, spires, like the cathedrals from like the Dark Ages, just are like, why are we in awe of things they did in the Dark Ages? It really doesn't. It doesn't really make sense. It doesn't make sense like in America that there's like if you go around to every state capitol building, and they're all as impressive as like the Capitol building in Washington D.C. Sometimes they're smaller than that. There's like a Capitol building almost identical to ours and Cuba. Okay, so that country we're told was always pretty poor. All through South America, there's buildings like that. And so some people would just kind of say, oh, that's Tat-arian architecture. Well, Tat-aria is basically a forgotten empire. They ruled somewhere in northern part of Asia, basically where the Russians are now.
And
And
there's
you look at
evidence
all
of this?
well, there's old map. Like you look at on old maps. There's old maps that show Tat-aria. Actually, the funny thing is, if I could show you up here on this thing behind me, it says Tat-aria where Russia was. And so a lot of people they start to conflate the that empire with all the advanced architecture around the world. And they say they ruled the whole world, the Tatarians, and the mud flood basically kind of ended their reign. And then there was some kind of cataclysm, maybe like not exactly sure when, maybe the late 18th century, early 19th century, something bad happened where everything started, like the ground, obviously somehow the ground swallowed up lots of stuff.
Oh, so it was that recent though?
Yeah, it's like really recent, like within the last 250-ish years.
And this is not something that's talked about in the history books or.
No, and I think that's the thing. It's like, I'm sure for a person who just heard what I said and never heard anything like that, well, they would say that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. That's so insane. But when you start to go look into it, there's evidence that there's things buried everywhere, everywhere. It's so funny because I send my buddies, do you know Paul from Understanding Conspiracy, Paul Stobbs?
Mm-mm.
He just wrote a book called The Nephilim, the clowns look like Nephilim, or Nephilim look like clowns.
Okay, I've heard. So I feel like I've heard of that.
Yeah. He's pretty big YouTuber, and my one buddy Alpha Talks, and so we kind of talk about very similar things often, and we have a group text thread, and I send him all the time about, hey, some guy in Turkey just starts digging in his garden. He just dug up some kind of Roman ruins like under the ground. Like, they started trying to do like a subway in Europe, and it's like, oh, whoops, here's a Roman bathhouse. Somehow it's under the ground. Like churches are under the ground. And like, so nobody really ever stops to say, how did they get under the ground? Like you think about a good example of this is like Easter Island. The Moai statues, the weird heads.
Yeah.
Well, they're not just heads. They have bodies, but most of the bodies have been completely buried, and they're huge. So,
and
like,
that's why it's so weird, because people are like, why are these weird like heads here? But it's like you're only seeing part of it. Didn't they just recently discover that there was more to them?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, like, it's like they just realized that like 15 to 20 feet of those things are under the ground. Like you go in, so like
why haven't they gone under and buried, go under underneath them and see what's buried under there?
Well, I think the crazier part is the fact that, so that's just one example. I mean, that's an example to say this is a worldwide phenomenon. Like Göbekli Tepe, that's like an ancient site, and we're told that it's what we're told is that the oldest like megalithic structure in the world, this temple system in Turkey, and it's completely 100% buried. Well, they tell us that somebody buried their own temple. I don't buy that one for 1 second. It makes no sense. It's not like it was a big mound. It's literally flush with the ground. It's like under the ground. Like something buried it.
Yeah.
Even when they first found the pyramids, the Sphinx was buried up to its head, right? The Sphinx was buried up to its head. The pyramids, only parts of them were sticking up. There's evidence all around the whole world. I think there's a pretty awesome gate that I guess was in Iraq, like ancient Babylon, that has like the cherub looking statues with like the big beards, and huge gate, 25 feet tall. Picture from it in 1850, where it's like literally buried all the way 100%.
Okay.
And so you go into like ancient Turkey. This is the thing I talk about a lot because I read the Bible a lot, is the churches from the book of Revelation. All those churches that, everyone thinks is going to happen in the future, all those churches are destroyed. Like all the cities that those churches were in had to be excavated, where you can see like there's like Sardis, Turkey. There's a very famous picture where there's like a 15-foot tall, massive Roman column, and it's literally 100% under the ground. And so that kind of stuff is everywhere. And then when it gets really crazy, as you go into like modern cities, like cities that we're told are not even that old, and you see lots of evidence that you have these basements that are not really basements. They're like first floors, but they're kind of halfway into the ground and halfway not in the ground. You know what I'm talking about? Like if you ever see, like, you go to a lot of cities and they'll have windows that are literally at the ground level, right? They're not basements, but like you have like stairs, like kind of almost like a brownstone look. You have stairs up to the front door, and then you have the first floor. Well, that's the first floor, and then the basement is kind of halfway out from the ground, but it's not. Sometimes you see like street levels where you have like the building is like here, the street goes like this, and then the windows start to disappear as the road goes up, where it looks like
Hmm.
there was some kind of dirt, something happened where this dirt or something engulfed this place, and instead of even digging it out, they just paved over it.
So
Like,
there's not a record of this, or do you think there is, and they're covering it up, or what's the theory behind
well,
it?
I mean, I would say that there has to be some kind of record of it, but no, they don't acknowledge it.
Hmm.
And I'm telling
So,
you,
and
like,
why would they not acknowledge it? What would be the theory behind that?
well, I mean, so obviously in the theory of like the old world Tat-aria is like that there was an advanced society that was very advanced. Like they even had free energy. They could use. They had there's evidence that some of these buildings had what they call antiquitech domes and spires, and they could harness electromagnetic energy through like the ether, and they did not have to, you know, they didn't have to burn things to get energy.
Isn't that the theory with some of the purpose of the pyramids? Because we were taught like, oh, this is just a tomb for the pharaoh, and it was just elaborate because they thought the pharaoh's going to the Holy Land or whatever, and so they built this big temple for him. But then there's other theories that say, well, the technology, it looks like this was used, possibly a theory. Just I'm not saying it's 100%, but there's a theory that it's used to conduct electricity, like you're saying, right?
Yeah, I mean that has made the most sense to me. Like that, when you think about like that, some of these structures like that, it's like it's funny. But when they built the Hoover Dam, the sculptor who put the weird angels on top of the dam, he compared the Hoover Dam to the Great Pyramids, and I thought it was
Didn't you
kind of
say?
interesting.
Yeah, didn't you say? I thought I heard you talking about how there's some uh temple or city or something they built the Hoover Dam on top of.
Well, this is crazy. Is that there's like 90,000 dams in the United States, 90,000 dams. So you think? I mean, I heard that the other
Are they
day, and
all used for to generate electricity?
no, I don't know. I don't think all of them are. I don't know. I don't know what they're all. I mean, obviously, there's obviously degrees of them. There's only one Hoover Dam. I don't know if there's anything even comparable to that. But yeah, when they created Hoover Dam, that created Lake Mead, and when Lake Mead was created, that obviously flooded a giant plain of, just I mean, like in Nevada, just like I mean, how huge Lake Mead is,
Yeah.
and I learned this, yeah, when I was doing some research on the Hoover Dam. It said that there was a city under there, under Lake Mead, that was the ancient Anasazi, which are literally Anasazi just means ancient ones. So the Hopi and the Pueblo Indians claim to be related to them, but nobody really knows much about them. They lived here supposedly around 1,000 years ago. Well, I think when people think, oh, there's a city submerged, they're probably picturing in their head like mud huts and stuff. But if you go to lakemead.gov, literally on the thing, it mentions that, yeah, there was a city under there. And they said some of the structures had up to 100 rooms in them.
Wow.
And so I was like, wait a minute, that sounds like a real city. Like, like 100 rooms, like that's, that's really big. So I don't know what it looks like. But I
So
mean, I guess the point is like, we'll probably never find out because it's under the water.
you think possibly some of this stuff is on purpose? They're trying to cover it up?
Yes. Yes, that's what I do think. I think that the timeline of America doesn't make a lot of sense. I think that the westward expansion and the way big cities were just popped out of the ground so quickly doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, you think about it, like as Americans, we're taught about our history. So Lewis and Clark didn't go across the Mississippi until the early 1800s. And so by 1840, you have like Chicago just starting out. And then by the end of the, by 1860, it's like the Chicago we know today until it burns down and they build it
I mean,
again.
the Native Americans were here, right? So what did we take some of the stuff that they had already built and they had done? I mean, obviously they didn't build big skyscrapers, but maybe they had some sort of foundation.
Well, the thing is that Native American, what does that even mean? Obviously, we have an idea what that means when we think of in our brain, like what does that mean? But what I find kind of interesting is the history we've been taught about 1492, Columbus, and all that kind of stuff, and like he's the first Europeans to come over to the New World. But I remember even when I was in school at the time, the teacher was kind of like with a nod and a wink of saying, yeah, a lot of people think the Vikings actually got here before Columbus did. You ever heard that?
No, I haven't. I did hear that they
like Leif Erikson and stuff like that.
Well, and then isn't there a thing like I forget what it's called, like the land bridge theory or something?
Yeah.
How, like if you take the pieces of the continents and you put them together, they connect, which is a little suspicious. So it's like they were connected at one point, and then something caused them to break apart, right? Or is that conspiracy? I don't know.
No, I mean that's the idea of Pangea. There's obviously the Bering Strait between like Alaska and Asia. I mean, I think that's stupid. I think that there's people didn't walk from Asia to North America, and if they did, why would they go down to South America and they wouldn't settle up north? Wouldn't there be a lot more of them here than South America? Why would South
weather
America
was different though, right? Because like
I know, but if you think about
like they have settlements here in Arizona where it's like 110 and there's mud huts and things, or mud like cities and things, and I'm like, why would anybody settle here? I mean, even parts of Arizona like Flagstaff that are more cool, but why would you settle in the desert? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think
that wasn't desert.
Have you ever seen the old maps that showed that California was an island?
No.
Yeah, there's some really crazy old maps that show California as an island, which is interesting because Death Valley is below sea level. So it kind of makes sense that it could have been at some point. I just think that what's interesting, anyways, what I was saying about the Vikings is my teachers. I remember saying that, like, oh yeah, a lot of people believe Leif Erikson got here before Columbus did. And if you look at like on a map, if you look at from Northern Europe to the top part of North America, you could kind of go between Iceland, Greenland. You could kind of hug the coast and you could get to North America a lot easier than you could go straight across the Atlantic to like South America, which supposedly Columbus did. So now it's kind of widely accepted the idea that the Vikings did get here before Columbus did.
Well, okay, yeah, but they're saying, okay, so it says he's believed to be the first European to set foot in North America, but he landed in present-day Canada, not the United States.
So what does that mean? Well, Columbus didn't land in North America either. I mean, the point being is like that. Okay, so now that people are willingly acknowledge that the Vikings got here first. So what did they do? Nothing. You know what I mean? So like based on what they're saying of like
they do stuff in Canada, they do stuff in maybe he made the maple leaf flag. Maybe that was it.
Well, I guess the point is like that when you start saying this, like, so how did they just recently discover that this could be true? Because again, it was funny because it was like not in the books, but my teacher always kind of, I remember when certain teachers said, yeah, a lot of people believe this is true. And again, now it's widely accepted that it is true. So why were we ever told that Columbus was the first one? Because again, he didn't even make it to the main lands of either, I mean, at least first, he didn't make it to the mainland, South America or North America. So obviously,
the Vikings kind of frowned upon because they were like pretty like bad people. Like, I mean, I guess Columbus had his own skeletons in the closet too, but maybe for whatever reason, people looked at more at him as the good guy. You know how like they do that? They do that now in our society with like leaders. They go, oh, this person is really good and this one's really bad. But I feel like in 100 years it might flip-flop and it will go, oh, actually this person was the good guy and that person was the bad guy.
Well, but what's interesting is like the timeline they say of like when they talk about the migration of like the Native Americans here, and then they talk about when the Vikings got here. It's actually really close now. Okay, so now who's the Native Americans then? You know what I'm saying? Like that. What if the Vikings didn't do nothing when they got here? Because I mean, to call them Vikings is almost like, what does that even mean? What we're really saying is Europeans got here before Columbus did. And so we're saying the Europeans got here and they did what? Just went back? I mean, that's not really what we're like. Why would they spend so much effort to get here without doing anything here?
So
I
what
mean,
is the theory behind the cover up? Like, why would they cover this up then?
well, again, so the main theory behind the cover up is we live in a society that everything's been monetized. If there was free energy, like obviously the guy who created our school system, the modern school system, John D. Rockefeller, he made he made so much money selling energy. He couldn't have done that if it was free, right?
Right.
So the people who have taken credit for all the industrial revolution and all the great things that the men who built America, I remember there's that History Channel show. Those people obviously benefited greatly by the history we've been taught. They're credited with all the things. What if it was a lie?
Wouldn't be the first time that our government has lied to us. That's for sure. I mean, yeah, there's definitely, yeah. I mean, you look at the history, you think about like, we think other countries taint the history and that, oh no, like North Korea, oh, that's total BS. We would never do that here. I mean, you're seeing it. If you watch the news, you see daily, they twist things and they edit things deceptively. And I mean, they're totally crooked. And we can see that right in front of us. What can we not see? What is hidden? That's the stuff that I'm fascinated by. I don't say that I think or I know that it's this or I know that it's that, but to think of all the things that the possibilities, it's really fun to think about what are they hiding? What do we not know? What is going to be revealed? And maybe in our lifetime. I mean, there's a lot of things that have been revealed already that I thought I would never hear that news. I mean, the government admitting they don't know what these things are, but there's UFOs out there. There's unidentified flying objects, and they're real. They're not just a speculation. And seeing the video of it. I mean, again, maybe the video is faked. I don't know, but it's sure is fascinating to see that.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, like you were saying that if you can't trust the news, why do you believe you can trust the history books?
Right. Well, and I think it was interesting. I watched this video today, and they were saying, God, what was it like? I think the statistic is inflated. It was something, and maybe it was a certain city or region, but they said like 40% of kids couldn't read or whatever. And so that this is another conspiracy. I love conspiracies. They're fun, but this was a conspiracy theory. It might've been, did you post this maybe? I don't know how I saw it, but anyways, it was a thing where they said, like eventually people are not going to be able to read. And so you're just going to have the history you're going to learn is what people tell you. And so now you're trusting the government or the school system or whatever to tell you the right history. And then the other theory that I've heard, the conspiracy that builds on this is like a lot of the things that they're doing now are building it so that they can tell this history, this narrative that they're creating, that these are the good guys and these are the bad guys. And because they're doing things that you're like, why are they doing this? And it's because they're building this narrative for later when they can say, see, this was the good guy and this is the bad guy. And people won't be able to research it because either they're not going to be able to read or the government's going to control the internet and the sources of information and everything else that, that may be the truth, may be flagged as misinformation or disinformation. And so that's a kind of a scary thought.
Well, just consider this, that with that kind of thought process, what we're taught from history is that there was a time where the church became really powerful in Europe, and like the Bible was like only written in like Latin, languages people couldn't read. Right. And so that gave,
you had to trust somebody else to explain it to you.
Yeah. Like you and I can't read the Bible. We need somebody to tell us what it says.
Right.
And if you really think about it in that kind of aspect, it's like, yeah, that's a powerful means of control, right? Trust me it says it in here. You're just going to have to trust me on that. But of course, why would I lie? Because I look at this nice hat I've got on and all these fancy clothes. So if that's the way things were then, it would be naive to believe that things couldn't still be like that in different kinds of ways.
Isn't that part of the conspiracy against Christianity? Is that that's why it was created in the first place, was to control people and to have this, that where they could say the Bible and then they could use it to control people in the way that they wanted to.
Well, it's interesting if that's the truth, and why is there so much pushback against people who are Christians, like about like the way we live and the way we, if you really think about it, like the gospel and everything like that is really a denial of self and in doing for others. It's whatever you want to say. Let's just say I was wrong about it, and none of this means anything. If everyone did that, this would be a better place, regardless of what you believe, right?
Well, that is
If you,
interesting. Yeah, that
you know
is
what I'm
interesting.
saying?
That as somebody who's a kind of a a middle person, I guess I would say. I don't know what you'd call. I'm not like an atheist, but I'm not really like a Christian either. I mean, I grew up Catholic, but I'm not like a practicing Christian. But I can look and see and go, why are like Christians being so like I don't know, maybe persecuted is too strong of a word, but it just
Hmm.
seems like they're looked down upon. And it wasn't like that even in my lifetime. I feel like in the 80s and 90s, it seemed like everybody was Christian. And if you weren't Christian, you were a bad person. And now it's like things have like switched. And it's like, if you're Christian, you're a bad person. And the real people, love is love and all this kind of thing. And Christians hate gay people and they're racist. And what other things did they say? Like, they just say these things that are, in my experience, having Christians on the show, just life experience, talking to Christians. Most Christians are like you. They're very nice. They're very down to earth. There's a lot of, you go to church, it's a lot of like sweet old ladies, and so like, it's weird that there's this like Christians are bad and they're evil. And I'm just like, what? Like, I don't understand that.
Well, I mean, I feel like I understand. It's like I feel like if the Bible's true, this is what God said. This is how Jesus said it would be. They hated me first,
Hmm.
and if you think about it, like, and here's the interesting part about it is that people are right that people have used like religion, which I would say is not the same as Christianity, but like they've used religion to try to control people. It was funny. I had all these people saying, you got to watch the book of Eli. And I was like, so finally I said, okay, it's a post-apocalyptic movie
Is
about
that what
Eli.
Denzel Washington?
Yeah, Denzel
Oh yeah, and he's
Washington.
blind, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
a good
was like,
movie.
I was like, actually, I didn't like the movie all that much, but I thought it was a really interesting idea. I feel like they really missed an opportunity because in my view, it's like, so if he has this last Bible, he's the good character. And so they're living in obviously a horrible time. And so I thought, it'd be cool if Denzel Washington was using the Bible to set people free. And then the bad guy, we do know the bad guy was going to use the Bible to control people. And I thought that's a pretty interesting dichotomy of like that you have one person who would use it for, like you could use it
Right.
for both things. And I think if you start to understand it, like Jesus is like, he's offering you freedom in like a bad time because obviously they're living, especially when he's on earth, it's a rough time. They're under Roman oppression and all those kind of things. But he's offering you things beyond this. Like the things you can't see and denial of self will help get you there. And so I just think that's kind of interesting that like when you really understand what Jesus is saying, yeah, it Christians are not supposed to be judgmental. They're obviously supposed to love each other. And there's people who obviously twist his words and try to say things or they try to be real legalistic about how other people are supposed to live. I feel like from my aspect, like I know that nobody's going to choose Jesus by me being like abrasive and like saying
Right.
how they do everything wrong. I mean, I feel like that you get them to Jesus and then let him kind of sort it out. And then you obviously, you can help people, guide people here, but we're not here to condemn the world. We're here to, help save it. But
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
I think but to me, if the devil's real and Jesus is real, this is how the world would be because it's really an attack on him. And that's why it's an attack on us because it's kind of like that you Christians believe this and it's like, yeah, we believe that because that's what our Bible says. Like, so it's not my opinion about how things should be. It's like if we believe this is what God said and I affirm what God said, does it make me bad? It's like, I didn't write it. I
Right.
believe it came from God. So you could say that my belief is misplaced or something. My faith is in the wrong place. But you can't say that I'm bad for believing something. And I think that to me just shows you that it is spiritual because I'm saying God has given you the option to choose him or not. Why do you need me to affirm your lifestyle? Right?
Well, yeah,
That to
it's
me makes it
interesting.
spiritual, right? Because now
There's so many
because
different.
it's
Yeah.
attack on me to make me affirm things that I don't believe in.
Yeah, it's well. I mean, that was the whole idea of this country, is that you're supposed to be able to believe in whatever you wanted to believe, and now it seems like it's being, at least I don't know if it's not illegal to be a Christian, obviously, but I mean, it's definitely seems to be looked down upon by our media in a lot of circles. Just from what I'm seeing, again, I'm an impartial observer. I'm not a Christian, but I'm friends with a lot of Christians. I mean, I'm friends with a lot of people who are not Christian. But
Mm-hmm.
we have this preacher here, and I think he's just down the street from me, actually. I think because I'm in Scottsdale, and I think he's in Tempe. But I mean, he's like one of these guys that's like, gay people are gonna burn in hell and all this kind of thing. And I think that rhetoric is a big turnoff to just the average person. Whereas then you have the other extreme where now there's a lot of churches who are, what would you say, like LGBTQ plus
Yeah.
or whatever. And so it's like, how can there be this like huge dichotomy? And I mean, I don't know I don't think telling people that they're going to burn in hell for whatever, we're all sinners, right? Isn't that what the whole thing was?
Well, I mean, I would say ultimately, if you just believe what the Bible says, like if you don't have Jesus, you're going to burn in hell. So like that's what the Bible says. So it's not about the one sin. I mean, it's kind of like that if we'll all die in our sin without him. And like that's the biblical truth. Now, so to pointing out particular sins and saying you're going to burn in hell for them is kind of redundant. It's kind of like saying like that if you're a liar, if you've lied, you're a liar. And then if you're a liar, we know where liars go. But that's not the message. It's like, even like you go into just the basics of like John 3:16 is like, those who believe in Jesus, or they'll, he came and died so we'd have eternal life. And he didn't come into the world to condemn it, but to save it. Because he said, because those who don't believe are already condemned. So it's kind of like if somebody's coming to save you, the message is not you're going to hell. It is interesting. I mean, like, obviously that's just the biblical truth, though. It's like that is what the Bible says. But it's like, again, all sins, the wages of sin in the Bible says the wages of sin are death. So like, that's why, like, as I was saying, like that, it's not like I'm telling you to clean up your life and then you can go to heaven. I'm saying like you would need Jesus first. It's the sick that need a physician. So you need Jesus first, and then let Jesus kind of clear up the stuff in your life that if you want to change, it's all about, it's like people have to want to change too.
Because isn't that the whole, like, that's what I remember from when I was a kid. And I went to the Bible camps, and I went to the, they called it, I think it was, I don't remember what it stand for, but it was like CCD. It was like a Catholic thing. I forget what the acronym stands for, but yeah, I mean, so we took all these classes and things. And I remember like Jesus, like the whole thing was like, wasn't he like, he would take in all the outcasts, like all the lepers and the prostitutes and everything. They would go to him, and he would like heal the sick and like, but these are people who are like cast out of society. And so then that's just interesting that, somebody would say like, well, these people are bad and they're going to burn in hell. It's like, well, shouldn't you be welcoming to everybody? But I mean, I guess there's different interpretations of that. So I don't know. I just find it interesting. I think that's something as Christians, I feel like they need to all get on the same page, because it is, even the Catholic Church, they're saying, didn't one of the popes say homosexuality is okay now, it's not a sin? Which it's like, how do you make that change? I don't understand how you can just magically flip that switch.
Well, you or I can't. I mean, that's the thing. And so you either,
but can the Pope?
Well, I mean, based on what they say, he can, but I mean, I'm not based on what I have said. That's why I'm not a Catholic. Obviously I'm a Bible believing Christian, so I believe what the Bible says. And it's like, so if that's God's word, being able to change God's word is like putting yourself on par with God, right? If God wrote this, who can change it?
Well, it's not,
that's the thing. It's like,
if it's changing or if it's like interpreting, because society has changed so much. And then how do you
know what I mean, though? It's like, because I think that we live in a day and age when there's my truth and your truth, right? And like we can shape the world to whatever we want it to be. But if truth came from God, well, you and I can't change that, because obviously it comes from a higher authority than us. Yeah. So then the truth has to change us. You have to live based on what the truth is. But people don't want to do that anymore. So it's more comfortable to shape the reality. Oh, well, I don't really think it means that. But, you know, like again, that's the thing. So yeah, you're right. Jesus came for the low. He came for the poor in spirit. He
Yeah.
didn't come for the haughty. And I think that it's kind of like the main reason he's doing that is like he's forgiving a debt. We all owe a debt to God based on, like I said, sin, wages of sin or death. And so people who owe more are more likely to admit it. But like then you have like the contrast is that Jesus is going around and he's dealing with the religious types, the Pharisees who are not doing all those real big bad sins, right? Or at least they're claiming they're not doing that. In order for them to say, "Look how good I am," and that person's going to hell, and I'm not because I don't do what they
All
do.
right.
But it's like, but he's saying like that you guys are like whitewashed tombs. He's like, you know, you're all clean on the outside, but inside you're full of like dirty bones and dead things.
Hmm.
It's like, so your heart is in the wrong place. And so like that's what Jesus is coming to say is like that you're supposed to love each other. That's like the ultimate kind of rule.
Yeah.
You love God by loving each other. That doesn't mean you just you affirm everything everyone does.
No.
But the point being is like that that's what the gospel really is giving people a chance.
Yeah.
People are a chance, you know, like, yeah, we're not here to condemn them. You know, we're here to call sin what is sin. Like I said, it's not up to me what's wrong, what's right. I'm telling you what the Bible says if you want to know. And if you don't want to know, like I said, it's you know, like I said, it's
but I think that's the stereotype, and that's where Christians get they get a bad rap, is because they think people say that they want to paint this picture of this, like I said, there's that preacher that he's like, the gay people are going to burn in hell. And that's what they feel like Christians have a lot of hate in their heart, which I personally have not seen as, I've seen some of that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying I feel like that is more rare. The average churchgoer is more open-minded, is like a sweet old lady. You know, these are the church, like this, there's some of the nicest, kindest people that you'll ever meet. And I'm on board with that. I'm like, you know, maybe we don't agree about everything. And maybe I don't go to church and follow the religion perfectly, but I can get along with that. I can, you know, I understand that. Like I was raised, it's so weird. My dad, I remember like in the 80s, I grew up in Seattle. And do you remember like Ted Bundy, the serial killer?
Oh yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was like, dude, I hate this guy. And my dad would like correct me. He's like, you shouldn't hate anybody. I was like, what? Like, you don't hate Ted Bundy? Like he killed people. He's like, and he'd always like say, I hate people's behaviors. You shouldn't hate anybody. And I was like, that's like a really, like, I remember it. This is like when I was a kid, and now I'm like in my 40s. And this is like a really interesting lesson that I feel like personally, like that is something that is lacking in this world. And I feel like that's on par with Christianity. I feel like that's the Jesus that I learned about, was like, he loved everybody. Again, like I said, the lepers, the prostitutes, like all these people that were outcasts of society. And yeah, you didn't like, I'm sure some of those behaviors did not line up with being a Christian, but I mean, the first step is love. And then, you know, yeah, obviously we have laws in place, you know, you're not going to let Ted Bundy out on the streets and things like that. But I mean,
yeah, it doesn't mean that at the same time, God is just, you know, so like it's interesting too, like he would tell certain people to repent. And if they didn't, obviously it's not like he affirms it forever. I do think it's interesting, like that some of the things he got criticized for by like the Pharisees were like, yeah, he's eating with the tax collectors and the sinners and all the bad people. And I do think that as Christians, yeah, like the sick need a physician. So like if I'm only hanging out with like the people who claim to be good, well, how much good am I really doing with them? So sometimes at times, and I think that's why like some of the videos and stuff I do make, I'm trying to cast a wider net. I'm trying to talk about stuff that everybody else wants to talk about. And I'm trying to be able to present it in a way that makes sense with, you know, a relationship with God and a biblical understanding. So I think that to me, it's kind of like that I have friends who are not Christians. And I'm not here to say, you know, by the way, you're going to hell, you know, like every 5 minutes, because we wouldn't be friends. And maybe, you know, like those people would not want to talk to me anymore. You know, so at the same time, it's like if they ever gave me an opportunity to share with them, then I would do it. You know, I mean, I think that that's like sometimes people some people could say some things that are true and they could say it in the wrong way, and everybody knows that. Like, there's a time and place for things to be
Yeah,
said.
for
And
sure.
I think that part of being, I think, a good Christian is like you think about like examples of Jesus. Jesus knew all men. So he obviously would know when the right time was to tell somebody something. So like it's my belief that we as Christians need to not be afraid to say what's true, but at the same time, like waiting for the right opportunity can be key, to
Yeah.
reaching somebody. Like being non-judgmental, and then that person comes to you one day because you weren't a jerk, and if they're in a jam, you might actually give them great advice because you have not judged them this whole time.
Well, yeah,
Then
and
you
that could
can
be
then you have an opportunity to reach somebody because like you have not went scorched earth on them.
yeah. Well, and I think that's not even just use a more surface level example, like, just things like, like I started working out a lot, so I'm trying to be more like healthy and stuff, but I'm also trying not to look at other people who don't do that and judge them and think that I'm better because I'm working out and eating healthier and they're not. I think it's a similar kind of thing. Like we all have different lifestyles, and some parts of people's lifestyles you might not agree with. That doesn't mean that we can't have conversation or be friends or go to a movie together or whatever, or you coexist and just be in harmony. And I feel like that's what's a huge problem in America right now. It's like we can't accept each other's different lifestyles, even if they're not hurt. Like if somebody else chooses to eat a bunch of donuts and get to 300 pounds and not work out, like that doesn't affect me at all. But like there's people that are really bothered by that. And I don't know, it's kind of sad.
Well, I think that that's, again, no coincidences. I think that the reason people are so against each other is because the people on high like it that way. That's why they're always pitting us against each other.
Because then we won't go again. If we banded together and went against them, see, that's what
we would know who the real enemy was.
Yeah.
If they didn't have us looking at each other.
Yeah.
I think that's
so weird. When I try to point out some of the corruption, and then people like they take offense to it. I'm like, wait, I'm not calling out
team sports.
I'm calling out the corruption. Like if you talk about,
well, if you call out that party, well, then you're talking about.
It's not even about a party, though.
I know, but I mean, but
talk about the pharmaceutical industry as being evil, which I think they are. I think there's a lot of corruption in the pharmaceutical industry. Somehow you get labeled a right-wing wacko, and I find that so bizarre because it's affecting everybody, or if you call the food industry, you call them out for being, I mean, they're putting all these strange chemicals in our food. All these diseases are skyrocketing. Somehow that's a right-wing thing. Which is just bizarre. I feel like if anything, it should be a left-wing thing.
Well,
government control over our food would be left-wing, but now it's a right-wing thing. It's just bizarre.
Well, I think that was one of those red pill moments for me was when, so I grew up, being raised in a conservative Christian home. And so I don't think anybody in my family ever voted for a Democrat. We were conservative, or like Reagan Republican type household. And so naturally I voted for George W. Bush. I said I've repented of that. But the point being
Dick
is like,
Cheney, don't forget, he's part of the ticket too.
I know.
Now he's a Democrat.
That's what I'm saying. But the point is like, so I remember back then, and this was like in my early 20s, you have all these people saying how horrible they are.
Yeah.
And I was defending them because no, they're good. Like George W. Bush claims to be a Christian and blah, blah, blah. And he does this. And then obviously these wars are just, and, we have to protect our people and blah, blah, I made all those arguments. And I remember when they had that Cindy Sheehan, you remember her?
No.
She was some woman who lost her son. And I can't remember if he died in Afghanistan or Iraq. Well, she like held protests out in front of like Bush's ranch, like every day. And like, so the news covered it like crazy. And you remember there was like the death ticker up on CNN and stuff like that, where they would show how many people died in the war. And they were counting up to when it was more than 9/11 and all that stuff. Do you remember all that stuff?
No. I mean, wait, what year was this?
I mean, it was obviously sometime during like the maybe 2005-ish or something like that.
I didn't watch the news. I literally avoided the news like the plague back then. I didn't start watching the news until 2020. And then I just got I started going down the rabbit hole and all this stuff, and I got wrapped. And now it's like probably people are, there's a part of me that wishes I never did that. Because,
well, right, but what I'm saying is like that.
I didn't.
So
Anyway,
I
sorry.
remember how the left was shown to be anti-war,
Yeah,
and then
like
the
that.
right wing tried to paint the left as weak and and like soft on terror and all this stuff, and they tried to.
Yeah.
So there was this dichotomy of like pitting us against each other. So like like the right wingers were claiming to be patriots, the left wingers were claiming like the right wingers are warmongers and war profiteers and stuff like that. And then I remember when Barack Obama became president, and I thought, okay, so things are going to obviously change a lot.
Right.
And,
yeah,
and
you
then,
think they're going to end all the wars. I think he campaigned on that.
Right. Well, yeah, he certainly did. And I remember when they start doing stuff in Syria, and then of course then he expands in Afghanistan, and then the war in Iraq takes forever to get over, and obviously they continue. And then I remember, and I was like, nobody even talks about the war in Afghanistan anymore. I remember feeling like we were sold a bill of goods. It's like this has not ever been what it's been. So by the time I became anti these wars, like remember when Trump was trying to end the war in Afghanistan, and they were flipping out, or when he was trying to pull his troops out of different places. And I remember like the only time he ever got positive press was when he bombed Syria once or something. Do you remember that? No. Yeah, but there was a time where he did that, and I thought they were like, finally he's looking presidential, and I was just like, we are living in in crazy times. And I remember this whole time, like the people on the left side of the aisle were saying, yeah, big pharma's evil, big food's evil, all these chemicals and stuff they're spraying, and it's like,
so that used to be a left thing then.
Yeah, right. And so then yeah, you get past like 2020, and yeah, so now it's like these things, it's like it flips regardless of what, it has something to do with whoever your team is saying is good or it's not. And I think that obviously the people who were paying attention in 2020 said, I'm not with any of y'all anymore. And like, I'm out.
Well, it's funny because I really liked RFK and I really liked Tulsi Gabbard. And so I was like, oh, I'm an independent because I like those two and they're Democrats, but I like some Republicans. And then they flipped and I was like, oh, maybe I'm a Republican, I guess. I don't know. Because those two make the most sense to me out of anybody. And I don't like, I'd say I hate 98% of politicians, but those two, I'm like, I like these two. I like what they're saying. And now they're not Democrats anymore. It's kind of weird.
No, so I mean, that's what I was saying. I was like, so now you really can kind of, it's exposed kind of naked to everyone, like that. No, man, these people are kind of one side's pushing you one way and they're kind of pushing you the other way, but they're all trying to get you kind of in this middle spot where, this is where they really want us, because it's nothing ever gets done that's good for us. When they finally get something done, it's always, we're going to be bearing the brunt of whatever thing they just did.
And, right. Well, the 2008, the bank crisis, the big banks got all bailed out. And then this big COVID inflation thing. I mean, they said, I don't know the statistics or numbers exactly, but it was basically a huge elevation of wealth upward to the richest, whatever percent or whatever. Like they all got richer, but all the like regular people, like all got poorer.
Yeah. I watched that. Did you ever see that movie, The Big Short?
Yeah.
I watched that movie. I remember when I started going down the rabbit of conspiracies, and I remember there was one that's like, it was like the New World Order and biblical prophecy, and then like the part 2 of it was all about the money, and it was all about the banks. And I remember I was like so sick to my stomach when I finally realized like how the banking system worked. And it was like, I feel silly for never looking into these things before. But yeah, watching like The Big Short, I remember I watched that like a year or two ago, and I was like, that's happening now. Like everyone, do you guys know that's happening now? Because again, this is how much they lied to us when they said, remember when the war in Ukraine started and everyone was blaming Russia for the inflation?
Yeah.
You know how stupid that sounds? It's like they printed, you guys can look this up. I think between 2020 and 2021, they printed 80% of the US dollar in circulation during that time. 80% of all the money in circulation was printed within like a year. And then they try to say, oh, it's Russia that's causing inflation. Oh, really?
Yeah.
What about all that money you printed? And so now you kind of see like that I never really understood that concept of like keeping your money moving. Like it's basically like you don't want it sitting in the bank because obviously when they print that much money, I don't. If you had $100,000 in the bank, it might still say 100,000, but it ain't 100,000 anymore. It's way
Right.
less. And so
Well, that's
like
why Buffett is
that's why
taking
the
all his
stock
money out.
market. Well, that's why the stock market always goes up. It's because the money's worth less. Like
Yeah.
assets become
Sure.
become more valuable. So that's how the rich always get richer during these scenarios because they own the stuff.
Right. Well, so they'll take the money out, buy a bunch of assets, and then when the dollars go up, then they sell that because now those assets are worth more.
Well, no, or they don't. They don't sell. They keep leveraging what they already own
Oh, okay.
in order to
Well,
take
that
out
too.
more
Yeah,
money
they could probably
because
do
they
both.
don't actually because they don't just keep money. They keep the money always moving. That's what I mean. Like so, they don't ever take the money. They always gain more assets and they take on more loans and debt because because obviously it looks better as the dollar devalues. And so I started to understand. I'm like, dang it! Like so when they do that, I didn't realize that. Yeah, like so if you and I fired up the money printer machine in our own basement, that would be counterfeiting and that would be illegal. But when they
Right.
do it, it's fine, even though it's like it's literally stealing from us. And
Yeah.
so that is the real game. It's like that when you're distracted, you're fighting about, you know, I don't even know, like, you know, weird topics that they always try to pit us against each other. Meanwhile, yeah, like they're just firing up the money printing machine. It's probably still going. And it's like they don't care. You know what I mean? I think that's the point is like to be distracted. And it's that whole like kind of you're gonna own nothing and you're gonna be happy.
Right.
Like, yeah, we're like on the
Because
road
I
to
think
that.
a lot of these politicians, I mean, they are basically just puppets for their donors who are the ultra wealthy people that I mean there's a lot of people behind the scenes that a lot of these names people don't even like Larry Fink and all these guys that are the CEO of BlackRock. I mean there's a lot
Yeah.
of people, George Soros and his son and people that nobody knows who these people are, but they're basically controlling the whole country. I mean, we basically have an oligarchy. We don't really have a democracy or a republic. It's really an oligarchy where just these super ridiculously wealthy, just however many it is, are basically pulling the strings as to everything that's happening.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And you were saying even those names. I'm convinced that the people who are really doing all the work, we have no idea who they are. They don't want you to know what their names are. You know, it's like in the same way that they don't need to draw attention to themselves. These are the people who are
Really, you
really
think
telling.
there's other people that are not that are you don't even they're not even on paper?
Well, I'm saying that their last name's probably Rothschild. You know, like the people who like own the banks are the
Yeah.
ones. The people control the Fed.
Well, that's some
And
crazy stuff because I don't know. I mean, you're probably old enough to remember like there used to be like mom and pop banks, and that does not exist anymore. I
mm-mm,
mean, you
mm-mm.
cannot find a mom and pop bank. And the reason for that is because they changed the regulations so much that you need basically a team of 30 or 40 lawyers to look over all the paperwork and make sure you're doing all this shit right. They've made it so complicated and I mean, you couldn't just start a bank. Like you just, it'd be like, and then, so how many banks are there? There's like three or something or what? I don't know. I mean, it's
I
like,
mean, yeah, like who knows?
however
Yeah,
many it is.
who owns all the banks and yeah, the fractional lending and all that kind of stuff. Like when I learned about that, I was just like,
It
I
gets so
mean,
complicated. And I
it
think that's on purpose. I don't
oh
understand.
right,
I've seen The Big Short twice. I still don't understand all that stuff. I know that the average people, we all got screwed. And then would you blame these people or that people or whatever? Like, but the higher ups, they survived. They did
well,
okay.
it's
Everyone else
well,
was
you know, it's like
struggling.
what's like they show at the end of the movie is that put it this way: if the system was fair, like it would be harder to get loans, but you know what? It would be because people obviously are not giving loans to people who can't pay them back, and but there would be equity in the who gets loans, but they give people loans who can't afford them, and obviously knowing the government will bail them out or the government will buy those garbage loans, and so the banks made money on each ever little transaction. You know, so like that, and that's
Right.
obviously what caused the housing crisis because it'd be like they could sell bad loans to Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and all that stuff, and then the government would buy all that garbage, and so they made money on that. And then later, what they shorted their own bonds, and then they got bailed out after that. And so yeah, that was, I guess, the kind of like the takeaway was that those guys, like, was it Steve Carell's character was like, these people are idiots. They're showing these Wall Street guys that they're so cocky and they're like, they're idiots. And it's like, they weren't idiots. Like, they knew what was going to happen. So they could afford to make money every which way because they knew they would get bailed out afterwards. And like, when you think about it, it's in the same kind of way that I remember even just like recently that my friends were selling their parents' house, and there was like, I think it was like a 400 something $1,000 house, and it was like an FHA loan. It was like 100%, 100% of it was taken a loan. They didn't put anything down. And I was like, so just think about it. Like, if you were a bank, would you loan anybody that much money if they didn't put anything down?
Right. No, that's how it used to be. I remember my brother was a mortgage broker. He was doing very well during that time.
But do you think about it like that? Let's just say the bank did have to worry about people like that. Then, like, what if you were going to put 20% down? Shouldn't you get a better rate? Shouldn't you get a much better rate than those people?
Right.
Like, aren't you a much better investment for them getting their money back? But that has nothing to do with it.
Right.
And so obviously when they do that, they cause the houses to go up, and now regular people who actually have played by the rules cannot afford them. And I think that that's the place we're in right now. Where like I don't know how this place. I don't know how it gets sorted out now. I feel like
what is like the Rothschilds and all those people, like what is the ultimate goal? I mean, is there a more sinister motive? Because I'm just like, at some point you have so much wealth and so many, like, what all do you? I mean, you look at a guy like Elon Musk. I know he's a controversial figure and people don't like him, but he's out there giving Starlink to the people in North Carolina, and like, I mean, it seems like he's trying to help people, and he's buying Twitter because he feels like this is what we need for free speech, and he's doing things that, whether you agree or not, I mean, he's trying to do the right thing. Where, like you said, these people, these Rothschilds that are behind the scenes, I don't know how you justify their motives as for the people or trying to help people in any way. It seems like they're just trying to gain more wealth. I'm like, how much wealth do you need? It's like,
well, I mean, again, that's why I would say that this ends up being spiritual. It's like the stuff that happens on Epstein Island doesn't just happen just because these people are just perverts. I think it's because these people they serve like coordinated evil. Like, and I do believe that, like, these kind of things, going back to the first topic, it's like, yeah, aliens are real, but they're not from outer space. They're interdimensional. They're from a spiritual realm. And I do believe that the people who are in high places, they're in some kind of communication with them. It doesn't make sense to me that, yeah, because you ever watch those kind of old movies, like mob movies, and you're thinking like, this guy's got so much money, they can't even fit it into one room. And you're like, why don't they just get out? They can't get out because they work for people who are there, who they made deals with, and that's what's going on here. Because it's like, haven't you ever wondered, like we see in our Congress, how many geriatrics are in this Congress when you're like, well, why wouldn't they just retire?
Yeah.
Like, because they can't.
They like the perks, so they like the.
I know you've seen that one interview with was it Bob Dylan in front of, at 60 Minutes, and they're asking why doesn't he.
I saw the clip on your channel, yeah, where he talked about he made a deal with Chief Commander on this earth and the world we can't see. That's a creepy line.
Yeah, you think so? Yeah, so like, it's kind of like, so it's kind of like, why don't you just, because he made a deal, and it's like, why would he say that unless it was true?
What does that look like? Like, is it more of just like, they're just kind of saying it and they're reading it in a book and they're just kind of like making this thing in their head, kind of like how you're a Christian, like they're just kind of doing that on their own? Or do you think there's actual entity that they're in contact with that they can see and hear and touch?
Truth of the matter is, I don't know exactly. I do think it's interesting, like the idea of like selling your soul, because what does that mean exactly? I think some people could say it in the way that you've sold your soul when you start doing things for money that you would never have done before. Like, you really go against your own principles because you did, you've done something just for monetary gain. So in that kind of way that you could have done it. But when the way he says it, it does seem like it's more than that. Like that's he seems like he knows what he's done
Hmm.
in a way that I don't know, because I don't know. I mean, obviously I've never seen anything like that. I've never even really heard anything like that. But I mean, obviously Jesus is the one who says, what is a profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? What can a man trade for his soul? But there's interesting. You hear those stories about who is it? The Robert Johnson who sold his soul at the
Oh, the
crossroads.
blues player?
Yeah, and of course he supposedly couldn't play a lick, and then he comes back and he's like the best guitar player in the world. And this guy dies at 27. He writes all these songs about like the hounds of hell are coming to get him, and just weird stuff. I mean, but like that kind of meme in music is out there. Like I do wonder that when you understand, again, back to Lester Crowley, there's this influence of him in artists, popular musicians and the like. And they go by his methods, and they read his books, and they reference him in songs. And obviously this guy wrote books about how to contact spirits. And, that's literally like witchcraft is like trying to get spirits to give you power in some kind of way. That's magic. And so is it possible that these people use his methods in order to, you know, gain some kind of musical talent or ability, write songs,
What
play?
is the method? Like what some sort of chanting or something or some
Well, what I'm saying is all, I mean, obviously I don't know to the level, but I mean, you see the stuff about like, like it's like witchcraft. It's like, so they use signs and sigils and phrases and whatever in order to basically bind demons and getting to demons to do what they want them to do. That's why, like, you ever seen in these movies, they'll be drawing on the floor and they'll be drawing a certain
Yeah.
sigil, and they're doing the ritual inside of it, because like the sigil either summons them or protects them from the entity they're summoning.
Did you ever see that movie, The Skeleton Key?
I have not. I have not.
Oh my gosh, that one's like sticks with me. It's Kate Hudson, and she's like in the Louisiana or somewhere down south, and it's all about like the voodoo. And yeah, she does some sort of like chalk thing that protects. I mean, it's kind of almost seems kind of real. Like some of this stuff seems really fake, and then some of it you're kind of like. I think that's what makes those kinds of movies good, is where you're kind of like The Exorcist, where you're like, this seems like it almost could happen. Like it seems like it could be real.
Yeah,
And then,
it could happen. Yeah,
if
for
you
sure.
look into the story of The Exorcist, I mean, there is a story behind it, a true story of a boy, not a girl, but a boy who was causing objects to move and stuff. And then, so there's people that try to debunk it and say, well, he was just using strings or something, or like some way that he was moving. And then there's other people that say, no, this was 100% real. I don't know, but it's fascinating to think of the possibility, even, I think.
Well, I remember one time I think we touched on it a little bit, but I mean, like, so a good example is like, yeah, Jimmy Page, right? So Jimmy Page bought
Yeah, I think we talked about this last time.
Yeah, bought Lester Crowley's house.
He was really into that, because I had one of the drummers he worked with, and he said he was doing some like crazy shit on the plane, like playing with a Ouija board or something. Like,
yeah, no, he was all into that. I mean, I think they even said like his costumes were like wizard robes or something like that, and he was doing like, dude, weird kind of like ceremonial things when he was,
and he
like,
bought the house of somewhere there was some murder or like.
No, yeah, that was the crazy thing that I learned, that the house, well, I guess they call it Boleskine House, was where the site of this place was. Used to have a church on that site, and the church burned down with the whole congregation inside of it.
Yeah,
And
he bought that.
yeah, so he bought that house, and obviously Lester Crowley owned it first. Actually, I don't think he's the first person to own it, but like Lester Crowley had it, and then eventually Jimmy Page bought it, and there was all kinds of crazy stuff that happened in it. Yeah, they literally buried all the people from the church on the site in the yard. There was a tunnel from the house to like you go down into the basement, and like there was a tunnel through the property to get you out to where the graveyard is. And yeah, you guys can look that up. There's all kinds of weird stuff that happened at that house. I think even I want to say that Jimmy Page also bought a shop that had something to do with Lester Crowley. It was like some kind of a witchcraft type,
Yep, I think you're right.
bookstore. And yeah, so these people, like, I guess you put it this way, like that. I think that each member of Led Zeppelin each had little sigils for their names and things, and they wrote down like almost, I forgot what they put on their with the phrase they wrote on their album, but it was kind of a
So or whatever.
it was kind of like do what thou wilt or something like
Oh,
that's
okay.
that's Lester Crowley's phrase. And yeah, so then you see all these famous musicians who are repping him. You know, another good example is like that author, artist Alan Moore. He wrote he wrote the V for Vendetta comic books, like
Okay.
really famous DC comic book writer, and he used the method that Lester Crowley did, and it's like some kind of witchcraft. And yeah, so he actually talks about he was really open about the fact that he was basically possessed by a demon at some point. He said it was like the worst month of his life, but then he accepted it, and then it was like,
You know what's really crazy that I just thought of? Because you brought up Jimmy Page, and I was like, like how if you look at his career, I mean, this could just be a weird coincidence, but remember when he had that he guested on that rap song? I was like, was that rap song P. Diddy? It
oh
was.
yeah, that's right, yeah, that's
Isn't that crazy to think about? Like,
oh
they
yeah,
just happened to maybe have a connection there.
yeah, that's something, isn't it? No, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah, I did actually think I forgot that he I did. Yeah, that was one of his big songs. Was like on the Godzilla soundtrack or something.
Yeah. Come With Me, a song recorded by American rapper Puff Daddy. That's what it was called back then, featuring English guitarist Jimmy Page from the soundtrack to the 1988 film Godzilla. Wow, that's crazy. It's like we come full circle.
Well, I mean that. What else brings these people together?
Well, it's
You
funny.
know,
It's funny that you say that because I had this guy. Did you ever watch Celebrity Rehab?
I think I remember seeing maybe I've probably seen an episode of it. It didn't wasn't
Okay.
Flava Flav on that or something at some point?
Probably, yeah. I mean, one of the anyways, one of the counselors' name was Bob Forrest, and I had him on the show. He was a musician, and then he became a substance abuse counselor. And it was interesting because he said, like, he was kind of more into like this like arty kind of indie rock band. He was friends with Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think he lived with them, and I think he managed them at one point. And he was saying how in the 80s all the musicians of different genres were friends. Like metal, it wasn't like, oh, there was heavy metal and there was indie rock. He's like, we were all friends, and the thing that brought us together was drugs. So,
Well,
that
it's
was a big
interesting.
thing.
Well, it's interesting. Like Lester Crowley was all about using drugs, I guess, to kind of thin the veil or kind of enter that spiritual,
Is that
realm.
part of it? Yeah, because in
Well,
the
you think
Bible,
about
you
just
talk
think
about
about what the remember what the big Red Hot Chili Peppers album was called. It was called Blood Sugar Sex Magic.
yeah.
And so
I think he
Sex
was
Magic,
sober at that point, though, wasn't he?
but Sex Magic was from like Lester Crowley. So he even spelled it with a
He
K.
spelled it with the same. Yeah.
Yeah, he spelled it with a K. So like all that stuff is related. I mean, it could be. I mean, I guess that's the thing. It's like that the drugs is another way to get there. But I think
So
there's
is it only
different.
drugs or is it alcohol too? Because that's something I
I
wanted to
think it's
ask you
all of it.
about.
I think there's different. I think what I'm saying is like that there's ritualistic ways to do it. People can astral project. They can meditate, and kind of like some people can do it. Some people talk about those ayahuasca ceremonies and
Oh, you think that's demonic?
well, ayahuasca is literally called Divine of the Dead, and you work with shaman, and you contact spirits and ancestors and weird stuff like that. So it's kind of like it's Divine of the Dead. Who are the ancestors? Like you know what I'm saying?
Is
Like
that
that.
what? Because that is such a. I'm way too scared to ever do something like that, but I'm so fascinated by people who do it and the experience they talk about. And they say, I mean, they describe it as being more real during the ayahuasca experience than real life, which is really crazy to think about. I can't even wrap my head around that.
Well, like I said, I think it's a way. I mean, it's like that very clearly is you're literally using people who are medicine man, like they're kind of like witch doctors
Hmm.
that are helping you through this experience in order to get on this different plane. And so that plane obviously is the spiritual realm. And it's interesting how people,
But could it be a positive spiritual realm? Could you potentially interact with good spiritual spirits? Like, could it you see Jesus or that the good
I
side?
don't think, I don't think you're seeing Jesus like that. I think that Well, I mean, God would say don't do that kind of stuff. I mean, what that is, it's like sorcery, like how the Bible would describe it. And a
Hmm.
lot of drugs back in, like back in the times of the Bible would be like, yeah, you use these drugs in order to get in the right mindset, spirit, in order to do your whatever your worship ceremony is. And like so very clearly that stuff has not changed in the ayahuasca ceremonies. So the truth is that the Bible does not tell you to not do certain these things because they don't work. It tells you to not do certain things because you're opening yourself up to things you don't understand. And so, like, could somebody have a positive experience doing that? Yeah, I suppose it's possible, but it's more likely to me that you're opening yourself up to things. Yeah, well, I mean, you're very clearly opening up things you don't understand. I don't think most people understand that kind of thing. And so, what there was interesting was that Aaron Rodgers, who
Yeah,
famously went down there and did it, and then he
Joe
came back
Rogan, and
and he was
I think
claiming
Jim
to see
Carrey.
the Hat Man. Do you ever hear that story? Like you ever heard of that entity called the Hat Man? It's like a shadow in
Yeah,
people's well.
yeah, I was really, yeah, that is really. What is that? What does that mean?
It's a demon. I mean, it's obviously sounds like a demon. It's like a shadow. It's it's a shadow creature. Yeah. So like he's claiming
Not
to see
friendly.
this.
I'm
No,
gonna
it's
Google Hat Man right now and see. Yeah, because I remember hearing that and going, that doesn't sound fun. That sounds freaky.
It seems interesting. Like the Aaron Rodgers is like for all the things positive he has in his life, he seems kind of like he doesn't seem like he's that well adjusted, So like whatever he did back down there, I don't think he seemed like he reaped a lot of benefits.
Well, he's not playing very well this year. I'll tell
No,
you.
no, he's not.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I don't
interesting.
think he's played well since he went down there and did that.
That is interesting. Yeah, it's because you hear people like Joe Rogan rave about it, and there's like a guy that I follow that the Mindset Mentor podcast, and that guy's like really clean cut and like really super nice guy, and he raves about I think it's ayahuasca. I'm pretty sure it's the same thing, and he
Well,
talks about how great it is, and so it's
I've
really
I've
interesting.
I've read stuff that lots of these CEOs, like lots of
Yeah,
really big, powerful, like businessmen have done, mind altering drugs. Like
psychedelics.
yeah, like they would claim it would be mind expanding drugs.
Well, do you think for some people it does have a positive effect? Because if you're a CEO and you're just so, it's like these Rothschild people, like maybe the Rothschilds need to use magic mushrooms because I feel like they're just
I
so,
think they I think they have I think they have a direct line to the beings. I think what it is, and this is my belief, is that I believe that they use these drugs to get in contact with, like you're getting ideas that aren't in your head normally. Like, do you think it could be? And if they claim to be contacting entities, is it possible that they are? And so, like, you could say, is it possible to have a positive experience when you're doing that? Well, it depends what you mean by positive. Like, what about it's positive? So if biblically the devil could offer you all kinds of like material things, and so a lot of people would say, yeah, that was a real positive experience. I got all the things that I was looking for. But what does that where does that leave you one
well,
day?
I think
Like
that,
is it possible that like you could experience short-term benefit and then maybe long-term you could be like Bob Dylan saying I'm still doing this because I made a deal. I mean,
yeah, well, I think that
Has the deal Bob Dylan made, has it worked out for him? I mean, it sounds like that. I mean, if
that
we're
seemed
just
like he
talking
made a
about
deal with the devil because the guy can't sing for shit. And he's one of the most famous
well,
musicians of,
well, did he? Well, there you go. Though it's like he's not even a good singer, and he's
well, I
like
think the theory with psychedelics that how it could help somebody is it, especially with like addiction. I had a guy who was on here, who was a doctor, and he's doing experiments with mostly magic mushrooms, I think, but psychedelics, and especially with people with addiction, is like they're so fixated on this thing, and this is like they're stuck in their ways. And what the psychedelics does is it breaks that up, and it kind of allows them to kind of see things in a different light, and that can oftentimes be a positive one. I'm sure it can go negative as well, but for somebody with addiction, I think it could be worth the risk. Maybe you are opening yourself up for demons. I don't know, but
well, I guess that's the point. Is like that. If you think about it in the same kind of way that you could say, well, so and so tried this one pharmaceutical drug and it was right for that same symptom they had, but then it's like, so is
yeah,
there any side effects? to these things. I mean, we
But I don't do well with psychedelics. I mean, I've smoked weed, and I was always one of those guys that like would smoke weed, and then I'd get like paranoid and shit. Like,
no,
have you ever seen that Howard Stern movie where he's like, I turned to drugs, and he's like, but they made me paranoid, and he like flips around, and like that's, so like to me, I think
I was like that. I was like that when I was always like that, because I always like, I remember back in the days I did that kind of thing. I was like, if I had a little too much, I was like, I did not have any fun. And I do kind of wonder, like looking back at it now, as if even like something is like some seemingly innocent as marijuana is like, are you thinning the veil between where the reality we all experience all the time, and then the reality that's right here, but we just can't see it? I mean,
that's the reality I'm so fascinated by, though.
I know. Well, I mean, I think it is fascinating, but I guess in the same way that what is it naturally about people that that's not uncommon for people to be freaked out when they get high?
Yeah.
Like, but why? You consciously made this choice to do it. You kind of know what it feels like when you're there. So why are you it's like, I think it's
because you can't control it. It's the same way that I get scared when I'm on an airplane, because I'm like, I have no control over this airplane. And that's the same when you take those drugs. Like you're like, okay, turn it off. And you're like, you can't turn the drug off. Like you took the drug, it's in you. You have no control where you go. And so that is the scary thing. And so maybe,
but you get thoughts in your head that really don't feel like they're coming from you. And I think
that's how I feel.
So I guess that's yeah, exactly. So is it possible that those thoughts are not from you?
Where are they coming from? Yeah, the ultimate.
You know what I'm saying? So obviously, if like marijuana would be considered a mild drug compared to, some of these obviously psychedelics. So in the same kind of way, it's more vivid, but it's the same kind of experience. Like you're getting thoughts that are not normally present in your head. What if they are coming from the outside? Maybe it's not from the smoke. It's giving you access to this other side.
So would alcohol be on a similar plane with that? Because I always found that interesting that, like Jesus turned water into wine, and like that's a big thing in the Bible from what I remember. It was like wine drinking, and then like, Catholic priests, they're not allowed to have sex, but they can drink. And so a lot of Catholic priests, I feel like drink a lot. I don't know if that's a stereotype, but
well, I think that I do believe that, yeah, it's not a sin to drink wine. It's obviously like it's a sin to get drunk, in the Bible.
Does it actually say that in the Bible? Is that like,
well, it tells you very often to not get drunk, but drinking, it seemed to be uncommon during biblical times for people to not drink wine. And so obviously Jesus drank wine. He turned, his first miracle in the book of John was turning water into wine. I think that drinking a reasonable amount of wine is not bad, but in the same way that I think most people, the thoughts in your head are not different when you've been drinking. You might get a little more amplified. Yeah, might get more. You can either get duller or more amplified when you do that.
Yeah.
But it's obviously, especially if you're drinking something that's not overly strong, there is a control to it, and then you allow yourself to have too much to be out of control. That's always the difference between, like, I'm sure, like I said, when you smoke weed or you ate an edible, like you have no idea where it's going to take you, and it's just kind of almost like, well, I hope that wasn't too much.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, it was. Oh no.
So here's the thing about wine I was going to ask you about. Like, I wanted to reach out. Like I said, I don't really go to church anymore. I felt like when I saw this, I needed to go to church. When the Olympics had their opening ceremony, what the heck was that? Like, they said it looked like they were mocking the Last Supper. And again, I'm not a Christian really, but I saw that and I go, what is this? And then they said, oh no, this is Dionysus. He's the god of winemaking and fertility and festivity. I mean, that is there was a couple other things like the horsemen. You probably know more than I do, but I mean, I felt like dirty after watching that. I felt like I had to go to church. I was like, what am I watching? That was one of the strangest things I've ever seen, let alone Olympic opening ceremonies. It had looked completely different than the 80s ones, but just one of the strangest things I've seen on like mainstream family television. It was bizarre. What are your thoughts on that? I think you did.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, it's like my first take was immediately, it was like, I'm not surprised when they do this. I guess maybe I have been like, I've become a little cynical with this kind of stuff, because them mocking the Last Supper in like very prominent events is not new now. Like I said, I want to say that just the Grammys just did it like not too long ago. That when was it? It was in Sam Smith was dressing up like the devil, and
that was weird too. Yeah, that was super.
But most people focus on that. But there was Jay-Z performed with a bunch of other rappers, and they were all sitting around like the Last Supper too. And Jay-Z's calling himself Jehovah, like like Jehovah. So he's like basically calling himself God, sitting where Jesus would have sat at the table. Obviously,
are they
like
doing this on purpose? Like, is it?
Oh, but definitely.
Mock?
I mean, like
they think it's all BS, so they're like, "Oh, we're just going to mock you just to mess with you," or are they actually believing it and they think that they're on the Satan team or whatever? Because that, to me, it's like, if you think it's all BS, why are you even acknowledging it? You know what I mean? Like, if
right. Yeah, I don't have to make fun of things that I don't believe in. I mean, like, why would I spend my time in the spotlight to mock something that I don't think is even real? Like
that I don't care about, or I acknowledge. Why am I taking the time to? It's almost like maybe they're just part of me, I guess, just thinks maybe they're just trying to be controversial, and it's like maybe they don't even know what they're, and maybe not saying it isn't real, but they don't even realize what they're doing.
I think there could be some of that, but I think obviously the level, like people like Jay-Z and people who obviously put the Olympics together, they know better. And then so when they tried to say that it was about Dionysus and it wasn't about the Last Supper, that was a half truth. I mean, so obviously they lied. It was the Last Supper, but yeah, it could have been about Dionysus too. I think what they were showing is, I think to me it made sense that they posed like it was the Last Supper, like it was a painting. And I said, there's like one famous painting where everyone's eating on one side of the table. So everyone in their mind already immediately makes a reference to that painting. And then you even have like the woman in the middle had like the kind of was a halo on her head. And I want to even say she even tweeted, I think people had receipts of like the people who were involved in it actually tweeted about that they were in the Last Supper. So like they believed it. Obviously they apologized later. And then later they backtracked and say, oh no, you didn't see what you thought you saw.
Yeah, they took it down.
Yeah, they tried to say later that it was really about Greek mythology and all this kind of BS. Well, the funny part about it is, like I said, the Olympics were practiced, I think, I want to say it was like 700-ish BC to around 393 AD. And in 393 AD, they were banned by Theodosius I because they were pagan, because he banned paganism. So the Olympics was a pagan kind of like ritualistic games. It was about honoring Zeus and all the other old gods. And so when the Roman Empire became Christian, they didn't put up with that stuff anymore, so it was banned. So then they brought it back in the late 1890s, and the French are actually, ironically, they're the ones who brought it back. And so when they start to show all this paganism stuff, and obviously then they're mocking Jesus, it kind of makes sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like the Olympics was never just about international sports. It was about something else. And they obviously just play lip service to it now, but I think that that's kind of what they were showing. And I think what it was meant to be was that you present the Last Supper, and obviously as Christians, it's like the communion. There's the somber occasion. Jesus is telling his disciples he's about to go to the cross. And then, so that's what we're thinking about. And then they kind of flip it on its head by like bringing out Dionysus, and he's the god of wine and debauchery and transgenderism and every weird thing. And it's kind of like, no, you thought it was this, but it's actually this. And then you have all like the weird dancing, like with the woman with the beard and everything. And it's like, to me, it's like, they're just making a mockery of it. And I think it's like, to me, it's kind of showing like, if anything, it's showing like degradation in society, because what they showed you was not impressive. It was just like, what?
It's strange to me. I don't know. Like,
it's strange.
I'm a open-minded guy, but I just thought for an Olympic ceremony, it seemed like it had no, like, if this was like some sort of play or something, or some sort of show late night show for adults, like I would be like, okay, well, this is whatever. But this was like the Olympics. This is like there's like little kids watching, and there was like a guy with his junk out in front of a little kid in the ceremony. It was really creepy.
Yeah, it's well. I mean, you're just yes. The real question would be why. Like we say, so you get so Chuck, you get center stage for this once in a lifetime event that you're like everybody in the world's watching. Well, I mean, not that everyone cares that much anymore, but and then you do something like that. It's kind of like you're trying to like unite people with stuff like this. So why are you doing that?
All right.
There's no real
point. Yeah. Why you have to know that you're going to upset Christians with this. So why stir that pot of if again, we're supposed to be united and love and all this stuff? Like, to me, that is not uniting people. That's like, I mean, you could do a similar thing where you're making fun of the other side, or the other people, non-Christians. I mean, they would. I think like somebody made the comment, or I think a lot of people made this comment. Like, you notice they never do that. They never mock Jews or Muslims in these.
No, they don't. Yeah, and so why not? I think that it is. It's like you're sticking your thumb in a big portion of society's eye by doing that. Like, if they would have just done something that was purely about Dionysus and it didn't resemble the Last Supper, I think, some people would have said, oh, look at these pagans. But they would have played it off and said, this is a mythology. This is just for fun. But the fact that they did have to take a shot at Jesus, it's not innocent. Like you didn't have to do that. You could have done something with Zeus and every other weird Greek god you wanted to, and they could have presented it in a way like you could have presented it in a way like where Marvel presents Thor, a Norse god, and you made him Zeus look like Chris Hemsworth, and you have him out there, and they did something really cool with lightning or something, and everyone would be like, that was awesome. And even a lot of Christians who don't know better would have said that was really cool.
Yeah. But do you think some of this is out? They're doing it to kind of test the waters and kind of see what they can get away with. Because to me, that seems like some of this stuff over the last 5 to 10 years. I know that you probably agree with this, that it just seems like some of the things that they're coming out and saying, this is okay. And this is society now. It's just, to me, it's kind of like mind boggling that we're all going along with this. And I don't know if we're going to look back on this later and go, that was a weird time, or if it's just going to continually go down this path and things are going to get weirder.
Yeah. Oh, no, I agree with that. I think that to me, it's like, to me, it just seems like degradation. It's like everything in society seems like it's going downhill. Like you say, because what they did was not even impressive. And I do just think that obviously there's some kind of a sick enjoyment of them just being able to poke fun at Christians and Christ himself. But I often wonder too, being kind of like trying to think past what the obvious is. I started to wonder is that the way our viewing habits have changed with the internet and everything, everybody's more focused on social media. I wonder if there was a worry that if they didn't do something controversial, that the Olympics might easily been almost like forget that they're on. So do you think that they possibly did something like that where it's like, that there's no bad publicity, or like to get even a little bit, even if it's bad, is better than if nobody talked about the Olympics. So maybe I think
maybe it's all accidental. I think they hired this French guy to do it, and he's weird, but they liked it, and they thought, oh, well, I think there's a lot of this attitude, and it's coming from all sides, where everyone just kind of thinks like, well, my way is normal, and like everything's like total. This is like the way life is, and everybody will appreciate that. And I'm probably guilty of it too. There's things, like I said, I posted things about the pharmaceutical company. I was like, well, of course everyone's going to agree with the corruption of pharmaceutical companies is bad. And it's controversial. So maybe they just thought this is not going to be controversial and it'll just be artistic. And then.
Yeah. But I mean, you really think about it. It's like, can you imagine how many like quality control people are involved in this kind of stuff? They'd be like,
they don't hire Christians. I mean,
I know, but like, I mean, at some point you could think like somebody who like, again, historically, France has been a Christian nation. I mean, at least like some kind of denomination of Christianity. You think they would have said
hire the Christian? It's like
I know, but at the same time, you think like if I'm the bean counter, if I'm the guy who's like concerned about like, you know, they do all these things in all these movies to not be offensive to people. Oh, you know, like you think about the PC culture that we live in. It's like, you can't say that. You those people are going to be really mad. And somebody wouldn't have said, "Hey, here's an idea. Some of you guys get on the other side of the table, because if you all sit on one side, it'll look like you're making fun of the Last Supper." You know, like somebody said, you know, because I know that's not what you guys are trying to do, but it kind of looks like you are. So let's just try not to make the appearance of like, just to try to, you know, because there's about, I think about 2 to 3 billion Christians worldwide. Maybe this is not try to piss them off, you know, but
if you don't have anybody that thinks, if everybody thinks the same as you guys all think it's a great idea.
I don't know. I think it's too naive to say that. I think some people said they're going to be talking about this one tomorrow. Yeah. You know, you can't wait to see what they say on Twitter about this. And I do think that there's probably something to that, about that. The thing that people are going to really remember about this Olympics was like the most controversial parts about it. Isn't it funny? Like, to think about the women's boxing debacle, where it's like this person was born, you know, so like those are the things that people were talking about. And it's almost like
I bet on the women boxing because I was like, I need to win some money, and I won.
Well, who did you take? Did you take the one that
I took the transgender person that
took the one with the Adam's apples?
Yeah, I don't know. It paid off. I don't know.
Well, you know, but it's interesting in like the way that before, so the two people were born, you know, genetically men. They were not able to compete in previous international games. And then they were allowed to compete in the Olympics, and you're like,
well, one of them, I think it was like that people were saying, no, she's not transgender. She just has an extra chromosome. I don't know what.
I remember I made a video about that because I said she used to be a man, but I think genetically she was born genetically a man, but I think she has like ovaries and So it's kind of it's more of like a yeah, I forgot what the exact term of that is.
I think there's is it Klinefelter syndrome, where they have
it's something like that. But I mean, I think
something. So, but yeah, like either way, she had an excess level of testosterone, and so it was an unfair advantage.
Right. I mean, obviously they deemed it in previous international games that she could not compete, like real recently. So I guess the point is, like, I can't help but just being a little cynical in that way, saying like, if they let this person compete, they did so because they knew it was going to be controversial. And maybe they thought, who's going to talk about women's boxing if we don't do something like this? Nobody is.
Right.
You know,
that's true. Yeah.
It seemed like to me like it allowed the controversial Olympics to be the controversy to continue even after the opening ceremony stuff.
Right.
And so I to me, it kind of makes sense that, like, yeah, that they'd rather people talk about it. And it's like, because people forget.
Don't you think some of that stuff is backfiring too? Like with Target and, you know, Bud Light and all these, like now people are
in certain circumstances, definitely. I mean, I don't get it. I said, you know, if you think about it, like in the same way that you have, well, you know, you go back to BlackRock and Larry Fink and stuff like that. And they had all those, like, these kind of point systems where they were going to punish companies who were not like equitable. They were going to give them scores and rank them, and they were going to judge them based on this certain way. So they were trying to force
doing that, aren't they?
I believe so. I mean, so because the thing about it is like, I just don't see how smart people don't know what's going to be lightning rods and not necessarily good for business. Obviously, when Bud Light, like you think about like when we grew up, like just think about like the beer commercials in the 90s.
Those were awesome. I love them.
Well, I mean, obviously they're meant for guys. Like they're meant for guys who like football and women and going to the beach and fun activities and, like, you know, water.
It made you want to drink a beer, and then it's like, but also I feel like that's kind of a scam, because then like you're like, wait a minute, I drank beer and like I didn't get to go to the beach and hang out with beautiful women. I was just like,
but the point is like that's what marketing is like they're selling, like they're trying to sell this experience in your brain of like, oh, that seems fun, and then meanwhile, then they do whatever they can to like make somebody not want to drink that same beer. Those same people who would have bought beer.
I think what they did is they said, okay, we got all the frat boys and all the men drinking beer. We need to get the women to drink more beer. We need to get transgender people to
Well,
drink more beer. So
I
then
think
they,
that, I
yeah.
think somebody might have said that, and I think somebody who's not stupid would have said, "No, no, no, no."
But that's what I'm saying. I
These
don't think the not
these
stupid
people because
people work at these
we want to
places.
continue to sell beer to this certain, because it's kind of like the people are always looking for this certain demographic, right? Like the 18 to 35 year olds or
But they're
whatever.
trying to increase their profit and get another slice of the profit, and they don't realize the downfall of trying to do that. Yeah, it backfired.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I guess the point is like that if they already had all those other people, why do they keep making commercials at all? Because they don't always have them. You know what I'm saying? Like, the people
True.
continue to
Yeah.
change their buying habits. And so what you really do is, like, obviously if you got a good brand, you continue to make your customers happy. You don't piss them, you don't piss them, you don't take them for granted. And
Right.
I don't think that these marketing executives all of a sudden got real stupid. I mean, it's possible that, I mean, like, you think like this stuff with like Disney, and that's kind of what they sounded like they were trying to do. It's like, we'll just make the new Star Wars movies. We'll make them just like the old ones, except we'll make Luke Skywalker a girl, and we'll make like this other character this color, and they'll make them this, and we'll make them that, and then we'll appeal to them. And you're like, but you know who likes these movies? Like, like, so maybe make them like the ones they like. Just don't, like, you have like a guaranteed hit if you just make the product they like, and you can't ever take for granted for your customers. And I just do not believe that somebody didn't say what I just said. Like, hey, wait a minute. You can't guarantee that you have them forever. Like, they'll go somewhere else to get what they want. This is what they want. And
Yeah.
they're
I
like, oh yeah,
think that
but yeah, we
everybody,
can get all the women if we do this. And it's like, no, you can't. Like, you're not.
but
There's no guarantee of that.
if you have that guy in the boardroom, he's not gonna say anything, because then gonna be people will be like, oh, so like you hate women, you hate people of color, you hate transgender people.
He says no. He says no. I love money. They
Yeah.
would be
Well,
like,
but
yeah, that's fair point. Like,
I
because I
don't,
like
because
making
it's like,
money.
yeah, but you think of like these things like NPR, where it's like, it's 100% of the people that work at NPR now are Democrats. There's no Republicans. So you're just not going to have that viewpoint anywhere at the boardroom or anywhere in the company meeting. So it's a one-sided company now, or organization, I guess is what
I think the only way that makes sense is the whole BlackRock thing. It's like whatever they're offering is better than having continuing to make money the normal way. I do wonder if it comes down to like this whole idea of like Agenda 2030, and there's going to be a complete shift in the economy, like to a completely different type of economy, and this gets them a seat at the table afterwards, because
What, it
it's like,
remind me again, the Agenda 2030, because I know
well,
there's
it
like
was just,
someone saying
I
the
don't.
Project 2025, but that's like,
Yeah, I don't know all. I mean, so obviously this comes from like the World Economic Forum and like Klaus
oh,
Schwab
that,
and all
okay, I know him.
these wicked elites, and they're saying that we're going to own nothing and be happy. I mean, it seems to me, and it seems to me like like a lot of people who are paying attention, that they're intentionally tanking the normal monetary system in order to bring about a different one. And I think at some point it's going to be like people are going to need another one, because this one has been sabotaged. And so then when they start the new economy with like, the basic income for people, and the AI is doing lots of the things that we used to do, and automation, all that kind of stuff, they're going to be paying people to do nothing. They're going to own nothing, and they're going to be happy. Now, obviously, when the government is giving people money to spend, what if they said you can only spend it certain places?
Well, yeah, we don't like your social media posts, so you don't get your rations this week or
Well,
whatever.
not only that, but you think about it, like, what if the system only took, like, you could only shop at Target, or certain, like, yeah, I'm not saying like, that would be it, but I'm saying like that.
They have
Would
more,
that be,
we're giving up our
would that be,
control, our
would
freedom.
that be a reason for Target to do things that seem like counter to the best way to make money now? Because later they're going to have
Ah,
a leg up on whatever the next thing is.
that's true.
That's the only thing that kind of makes sense to me, because yeah, like the whole Bud Light thing, it's like that. I mean, they had to know it was a bad idea to do the Dylan Mulvaney whatever thing. Like, they had to know that was not on brand.
I think they just thought, because the thing was, is like they gave her a can. I think that they thought it would kind of go under the radar. Like she would share it with her fans and her fans would see it. And then nobody would, it wouldn't upset anybody. They were still giving cans to the other people and they were still, you know, they wanted to, I think they got greedy. I think that's,
I think that they know how the internet works. I think
I don't think they do.
I mean,
I think these people
it's kind of it's kind of like they would never have given one of those cans to the Klan. It's like, hey, we need to really get on the Ku Klux Klan demographic. No one will know. We're just going to give them
point,
all.
Yeah.
We're going to give all this Bud Light to them, and they're just going to share it with their friends. They're like, yeah, what?
But I think in their mind,
but what if somebody finds out that we did that? Then they'll be like,
see, I think in their mind,
they're never going to know.
They think that's what I'm saying. Like they think that everybody thinks like them. So like everyone is 100% on board with transgender. Like that's just not, that's not, if you don't, you're a bigot. That's the way that they think. Whereas I think in reality, that's just not the case. Like whether you agree with it or not, there's a lot of people that are not fully on board with transgenderism. They don't want men and women's locker rooms. And I mean, I'm just the messenger. I'm just saying there's a lot of people that are upset about these things and they don't want their daughters playing against men in high school and things like this. Like, and so it is a little bit of a controversial topic, obviously. I mean, hence the boycott.
I don't know. I guess I like to think past that they just they just did one of the dumbest things they could possibly do. I think that they're crazy like a fox. I think that there's a reason they did these things, because I said it's easy for people sitting on the couch to always just say, "Oh, they just did something stupid." It's kind of like saying, "Oh, the government's so
no," but you're right,
inept.
because
they're so inept in certain ways. But it's like, I believe now when you see certain things the government does that just makes it seem like they're so inept. It's like they're inept on purpose. Right. It's like,
no, you're right, because there is the DEI score. That is a real thing. That's not a conspiracy.
Yeah.
Companies are rated on these things. And if they don't hire a certain number of demographics or promote a certain number, I mean, look at Hollywood has made up their own thing where they said you have to have this percentage of minority actors or crew. Like, and it's weird because if you're doing a movie about a certain era where there was not a minority or whatever, or if it's only about men and there's no women, then I guess you've either got to have a woman director or a crew that with minority. I mean, it gets kind of.
Is that true? I remember when Dunkirk came out and they were like, "There's not enough representation in this movie." You're like,
yeah, I mean, this is,
you know, it's just like, come on, you know, like, come on, like what, you know, like I don't know. I guess it's just the things are just never coming. You know, they're not going back to the way they used to.
The world is you and I knew it, and that we grew up in is gone. That world is completely gone. The world has changed for better or worse. It is what it is. But
let's be honest. Like, I'm not saying that having more representation in different types of things is bad. The world as we knew it was better than this one. This place keeps getting worse. Like the music's getting worse. The movies are getting worse. Like the food's getting worse. The buildings are getting worse. Like people's health's getting worse.
You ever see that movie?
Yeah, no, I mean, it does kind of seem like that. Where like that, you know, it's funny, like, because obviously I know you interview a lot of musicians. I can't remember what the stat was, but they were talking about the average amount of lyrics in a song. Like, you know, you go back a certain amount of years versus how many lyrics are in modern songs. And it's like everything's getting dumber. Like the songs back in the day, they had more verses and they actually had a lot more nuance to the songs. And
dude, it's crazy. I did a song yesterday. I made a theme song for my podcast with AI and it was amazing. And I was like, oh my God, this is like, so I think musicians are in trouble. I really do.
Oh, I think when they were having that writer strike, when I found out that like ChatGPT could pump out scripts and stuff like that, I was like, you know what really makes sense to me is if they took books and they got one of these AI programs to adapt it into screenplay, and you had several people who could tweak it to make it a movie, man, they could do that really. I mean, it sounds like that doesn't sound very far-fetched for them to do
even
that.
With actors and stuff, like here's my likeness, go, and you can take and even if I die, you can have my likeness. My family will reap the benefits of my likeness for eternal. Like you look at the Rothschild family, like, I mean, imagine if you're like the family of a Tom Cruise or something, and they can just continue to make movies and his offspring will continue to benefit from that
No,
years after we die.
that's very real. Because even like I was saying, just in the stuff, because I make lots of videos and
Yeah,
make podcasts and stuff. You can clone your voice, and then you could, like somebody else could type out a script, and it could be you talking.
great. That's scary.
I know it is. It is scary. I mean, obviously, everyone sees like those deep fakes and like those fake ads and stuff, and it's like, yeah, that you could easily see that. And of course, it's my belief that they can never get the quality of the actual people. I mean, people are still above. Like really these AI is really just a database, and they can do amazing things with. And it's a interesting tool to be used, but you're never going to get really like. If you ever tried to use AI to make like a video, it would never be as good as the one you could make.
Yeah. Have you seen
Because I
that
think
movie, The Substance, yet?
uh mm.
Oh, it's so good. I want you to watch it and then make a video about it because
It's
I've
called
seen it
the
twice.
Substance.
Yeah, it's so good. It's like, but yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but she gets this like substance, this black market drug, and then it like basically like creates like a younger clone of her. And it's like, it's super, like, there's a
Oh
lot of
wow.
stuff going on. Like, I'd be curious to hear your take on it.
Where's that? Where can I see that at?
Well, it was in the theaters. I don't know. It might still be in some theaters, and then I'm sure it'll come to streaming at some
Okay.
point too. But yeah, that's a good one. And yeah, I had a guy on yesterday, and we were talking about this was an interesting theory about like text message. He said like think of all the messages you've said like when you vent to somebody about something, and all your private emails and messages and things. What if one day like another country like hacks that database, and then because it's probably recorded somewhere, and then you could go in and you could look up your name and see all the things that everyone has ever said about you, like, and like that would just tear us apart as a country. And then while we're all busy fighting with each other, then another country comes in and bombs us or do whatever they want to do. And it's kind of crazy to think about.
Well, it's funny what I thought you were going to say is that what if somebody had your responses on text messages for 10 years, and then they could actually basically predict what you would say.
Yeah, that's probably true too. Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like the probability of your responses, they could know exactly what
Yeah.
you would pretty much, they would know what you would say when you got
I don't
asked
know.
certain
I'm kind of
questions.
off the wall a lot of times, but maybe.
You gotta keep the AI guessing. Like they could never figure out
Yeah,
this guy's too.
that's
It's lost cause.
crazy.
No, but I mean, it is interesting to think like that because we are probably pretty predictable for the most part, like us people. And like if they knew all your search history, the music you listen to, the movies you watch, the things you write, and they know all that stuff, the places you go.
Well,
I mean,
yeah. I mean, they could probably do it right now with AI and be pretty close. And so, but yeah, imagine if the technology gets better. I mean, we're in the beginning stages of AI, and imagine where it goes. See, that's what that lady that wrote the book about the harvesting souls, about how the aliens are using the technology so that we're just going to be so locked into the technology that we lose our soul. Basically, it's creepy to think about.
no, I mean, I'm kind of in. I mean, I kind of get that. I think that that's ultimately like a thing that people should be concerned about, and I don't want to be a hypocrite about it because I think that obviously we all use kind of these black mirrors,
Sure.
and it's hard to separate ourselves from it. I mean, obviously somebody like you and I, we use it, and hopefully we use it for the good to like get the truth out and say things that reach a lot more people than we could reach. But at the same time, I do think that people need to see people in real life, sometimes, and they need to get outside. They need to go for a hike. Obviously, and you live this amazing place. People need to go experience God's creation and live it. Like because you can never see a YouTube video that could compare to the things you could just go see in real life and see pictures. I don't care how good the video is.
Yeah.
It's
Is
like
that
being out there.
your spiritual experience as a Christian? Is like that's your version of like psychedelics or like taking mushrooms, is just going out and like living these experiences in life? Like, because I feel like there is a spiritual experience too when I'm with nature. I feel like it's whether it's Jesus or God or whatever you believe in, I feel like there's some sort of spiritual thing there.
Well, I think that, if appreciating the creation is obviously you can be appreciative of the creator who gave it to you. And so like if, like as a guy who lived at the beach, I like to go surfing and stuff like that. And you can like really think, man, the ocean is awesome. you know, the sky in where you live, I'm sure at night is awesome. Like the places are cool. And I think that you can be thankful for that. And I think that sometimes we get trapped in our own, we need fresh air. We need vitamin D. We need those kind of things. And I don't know exactly why we need them all, but I think most of it's kind of just common sense. Like that we need to move, we get stronger when we move, we get weaker when we don't. And all kinds of aspects of our life. So I think that to me, it's kind of like that I learned at one point in my life, I put too much emphasis on fitness and stuff like that. I was running and cycling and lifting weights and all that kind of stuff. And then I was letting certain parts of my, your mind, body, and spirit, right? So you focus too much on the body. Well, we all get old, and that's the first one that's going to break down. So then obviously then you think, well, what's going to last longer than your body is your mind. So you should feed that too. You should exercise that too. But then obviously if you believe in something more, you believe the spirit is what actually is going to outlast the mind. So you need that aspect. And I think all that keeps us a fully functional individual, well-rounded. But obviously if you let your body get too out of whack, clouds your mind gets cloudy. Connected. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can't, like I said, we cannot be locked into these things. So I think we stare at screens too long. You get headaches. You don't feel like doing anything. You ever see, I don't know if you got kids, but gosh, I notice when I see my kids, when they've been in trouble and you take their phone away, they're so much more pleasant. You think it would be the opposite. They're so angry because they don't have their device, but it's they're so much nicer and more polite and more, I don't know what it is, but I do wonder how much that affects us. I don't even know, sometimes with me, a lot of times I'm using these devices to make stuff, but sometimes I do get into that, I'm like a normal person. So I'll scroll in and just looking at crap all day long. And I'm kind of in not a great mood when I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Why am I even doing this? Know what I mean? You're agitated easily when you're doing that kind of stuff. And I was
that's a good point. Yeah. On that note, maybe we should wrap this up. Thank you we did almost over 2 hours. So thank you so much for doing this.
Of course,
Anything else to promote? Obviously your YouTube channel, you're on TikTok, Instagram, all your stuff. Anything else? Any other special projects coming up?
Actually, I'm going to release a podcast tonight. And I'm sure if you guys, by the time you guys get this, it's going to be on Rumble. It's going to be about weather manipulation. So I put that on Rumble. It's going to be a Rumble exclusive because, I value my YouTube account, and I know if I release that on YouTube, I'd probably get in trouble. So put it this way, that's a hot button topic. What's that?
I was just going to say I've seen videos of these are government officials talking about cloud seeding and geoengineering and I don't know all the intricacies of it. I don't know how much power they have, but there is some manipulation that is real. I don't know how much power and control they have, but they are doing things that are supposedly to combat climate change and stuff. So I'll be curious to see what you come up with.
But anyways, guys, if you guys enjoyed any of this part of this, obviously I talked a lot about, at the early part, I talked about Tat-aria, the mud flood and stuff. We talk about that on my channel. So check out my YouTube channel, JT Follows JC, and I'm pretty much that on all these other apps. But guys, I appreciate it, Chuck, man. I appreciate having me back on.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. You'll have to come again too. There's so much more to talk about.
Oh yeah, always, brother.
Okay, cool. I'll see you online.
Okay, all right, man.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Every topic, one of a kind. From the rockers to the wise men.